Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Mr. Roberts' Neighborhood. My name is Zach Roberts. I'm a real estate agent in the Greensboro Triad area in North Carolina. I'm also a storyteller. Today I want to talk to you about some memories from childhood in the summer. I grew up in West Virginia, Wayne, West Virginia to be exact, and I just had a birthday recently. Made me start thinking about birthdays when I was little, and I'm very blessed to have a summer birthday. Those people who have birthdays that land on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, in the middle of January, we're thankful you're here. But gosh, you must have had some difficulty with your birthday parties. I have certain things that I think of with my birthday, and they're very tied to the summer. One of them is apples. When I was growing up, all through the younger years, we would go to a house in Pritchard, and we had some relatives. I don't know how we were related actually. Gene and Ike Mead had an apple tree, and have no idea what the type of apple even was, but I know the smell. It's a specific smell of apple and a specific taste of apple that you just can't find. And they didn't want them. They didn't even want the apples. And so we would go over there and get apples. But the real driver behind us to get those apples was Mama, my mom's mom. Around my birthday every year, she would say, "We need to go to Mead's and get apples." And I've told you before in another video what those memories were like. I still think of that around my birthday. And this year, a friend from church gave me a great big basket full of apples that she got from Western North Carolina. These were not the same as Mead's, but they were great. And I sat here with Julia Child on the television, and I peeled apples and peeled apples and peeled apples. And it was just another little taste of childhood. I think we need those. Another taste of childhood would be something like a bomb pop. If you were a 90s kid in Wayne, West Virginia, and you went to the Wayne Public Pool, just think about Kenny Chesney on the loudspeaker, Tim McGraw, maybe a little NSYNC, and especially on the 4th, uh, I remember eating bomb pops, popsicles, and those flavors are just as good today as they ever were. You know, certain foods don't taste as good the older you get, and there are other foods that are just as good now as they ever were when I was a kid. Bomb pops, just as good as ever. Blue Doritos, just as good as ever. Okay, another summer memory, also food related, also mama related. My dad remodeled our house, and you know, as a realtor, I always trying to tie in home. Let's talk about homes and houses. And I think when I invite you into my home and you sit here on this great big couch with me, I'm going to tell you stories from home. And you are making home even homier by being with me and telling stories and listening to stories. So I'm going to talk about my grandparents, and I'm going to talk about food. And Mama is very key to both of those themes. I remember my dad had remodeled the house, or was in the middle of remodeling the house. And summertime hit one year, and the kitchen was gutted. I mean, gutted. We walked across floor joists. Dad had laid some temporary plywood for us to get through from the family room across what would be the kitchen into the rest of the house. Well, in the family room, we had the refrigerator, the cook stove, microwave. We washed dishes in the laundry sink. And that particular summer, Mama came. Now, I don't remember if this was around my birthday. I don't think the dates quite line up for that. I'd have to think about when black raspberries come in, and I think that's in June. But she happened to be at our house when the black raspberries came in. And once again, if you ever came to my house when I was a kid, I lived on a farm, but it wasn't like what you think of as a big farm. Dad always calls it a hobby farm. which I think sounds really bougie. Like we were not rich people, but we had a hobby farm, and that meant a few chickens here and there, and a few sheep here and there, and a cow once in a while, and then we'd butcher the cow. But a steady over many, many, many years were the berries. And we had black raspberries, which as an adult, I've learned more and more that people have never even heard of black raspberries. They think red raspberries in the grocery store in a plastic clamshell are the only raspberries there are. Not true. There are black raspberries, red raspberries, yellow raspberries, and purple raspberries, I think. We grew black, red, and yellow, but the blacks were the ones. We had tons of them. Not nearly as many as the blackberries, though. We also grew blackberries and strawberries. I am off track. Anyhow, Mama was at our house. We're washing dishes in the laundry room sink, and the berries came in. These are not wild either. These were domesticated. We are growing these for a purpose. And I grew up, as a child, you think about things a certain way, whether anybody actually said it or not. I grew up thinking that jelly was a staple food item. We raised berries, we juiced those berries and separated the pulp and the seeds out, and from the juice, you make jelly. Without a kitchen, my mom said, well, it's time to make jelly. And my parents said, I don't know, we've got a lot going on here. And she insisted. So I have a visual memory, a mental image memory of her standing at the cook stove in our family room making black raspberry jelly. And I love that. If you notice a theme across many of these stories that I've told on this channel, a lot of the best memories come from just a little bit of inconvenience. It's been nearly a year ago I told you about a woman and man taking my parents out to Cracker Barrel from Wayne, really from Pritchard, all the way to Lexington, Kentucky. And I was a newborn within the first month or two of my life. And I don't even remember it. I wasn't there, but I think it's a great story. And mom and dad have such a sweet memory around that, but it was inconvenient. The point is, if you want to live a life that's memorable, you're going to have to embrace some inconvenience. I think of that with holidays too, with birthdays. You know people, and I do too, who say, "Oh, don't make a fuss. I don't want anybody to make a real big fuss over me for my birthday." Then it's going to be a forgettable birthday. It's not going to be a fun birthday. And same with holidays. If you think that celebrating a holiday should be free of inconvenience, not true. Work, well, this is another thought. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. And that comes from Mama. We've heard her say that forever. And so if you're going to celebrate Christmas or the 4th of July or whatever holiday or whatever birthday, do it right. Do it right. These memories that I have, going to Meads and getting 5-gallon buckets of apples, tons of apples, and sitting on the front porch with that crank peeler, all of that was inconvenient. Making jelly in the family room, inconvenient, and yet core summer memories. And that's where I'll leave it for today. I invite you to think about your own summer memories. Maybe they're food related, family related. Maybe you have some sad summer memories, but somehow over the years, they've shaped differently. Do you know that when a bad thing happens, the very next week it will look differently? And the next month it will look different. And a year later it will look different. Revisit some of those memories, even the hard ones, even the sad ones, and allow them to warm your heart because you're not who you were back then. Hopefully for the better. And you don't see things the way you did back then. Hopefully for the better. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a great week. Keep thinking about home. I'll see you soon.